Hello and welcome to the Productive on Purpose podcast. Are you a high-achieving woman of color who struggles with imposter syndrome, procrastination, and self-sabotage? Are you tired of going to bed each night hoping that tomorrow will be a better day, only for it to be more of the same? Are you sick of empty affirmations that make you feel good but don't actually lead to change? And are you over being shamed and yelled at to do the work with no insight as to how to get it done? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then friends, you are in the right place. I am your host, Dr. Kimmy, an award-winning, board-certified physician and professor. I am also your purpose coach. Here on the POP Podcast, we are about actual transformation. This podcast will provide actionable strategies to help you walk in your purpose. Let's get started. What up, squad? Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm excited that you're here and that you are ready to go for another week of, just re-examining how we think about our lives and trying to approach things differently, taking control of our lives so that we can move forward and fully walk in our purpose. I want to give a little bit of a disclaimer for today's episode. I did not plan this at all. So I had a completely different episode planned. In fact, I had it all outlined. I had it all laid out. And then you guys started, we started chatting. So I have a private Facebook group for the Pop Squad. So definitely go to the show notes if you want to join us in there. And based on some of the feedback that I got in the group, that kind of shifted my mindset toward doing this episode today. So this was not planned at all, but I think it's going to be a good one nevertheless. So usually I read a review at the beginning of our episodes. I'm not going to read a review today, but I am going to read a Facebook comment. Somebody in the squad sent me a DM, and I thought this DM was absolutely perfect for today's episode, and you'll see why in a second. But I wanted to read the message that she sent, and I'm not going to say her name, but she is a listener, so she'll know who she is. But I just thought this really, really embodied what I want to tackle today. So the message goes like this. Please keep doing what you're doing. I know maybe not everyone comments or always gives feedback on the things you post, but please trust that you are getting through to a lot of people. I watch your stories and I listen. She's talking about my Instagram stories. It took me a while to get it in my mind that I could also do it. LOL. I just kept watching, thinking, wow, she's great. LOL. Now I have shifted my mindset to believing I can be great too. Thank you. So, okay, so much to tackle in that message. Thank you so much for the member of the squad who sent me that. You know who you are, and I really, really appreciate it. And that mindset shift from, okay, she's great, but I can't really do that. It's something that we addressed in last week's episode on comparison. To know, look at me, look at my life now and say, you know what? Dr. Kimmy is not better than me. I am fully okay with y'all saying that. Listen, because it's true. I'm not any better than you are. I'm just not. I have developed, the practice of productivity and moving toward my goals with intention, and have replaced my mindset with a mindset of abundance. But I'm not any better than y'all. Listen, about a year and a half ago, there is no way. If you would have told me a year and a half ago I'd be recording a podcast episode, I say this all the time, in my home that I own, when I literally had no savings a year and a half ago, no credit score. I mean, I had a credit score. It was just, it might as well have been zero. That's how low it was, because I basically convinced myself that I did not deserve any of these things. I procrastinated. I wanted them, but I did not see a clear way of getting the things that I wanted in life. And so if I look at me, every time you look at me or every time you hear my voice, I want you to hear someone who literally was stuck for years and years and years, and say to yourself, okay, if Dr. Kimmy has come this far, I can do the same. That's it. That is it. One other thing to keep in mind that this person touched on and that we're going to touch on today is that sometimes we don't get started on things unless we think we can do it perfectly. And so today's episode is going to be all about perfectionism. All about perfectionism. And I want to just kind of give you a little spoiler alert. Sorry, I just hit my microphone. I don't know if you heard that or not, but I get a little. So if you saw me, I'll actually probably start recording myself, video myself recording the podcast. I gesticulate. I use my hands a lot. And so I am always knocking my microphone. So I apologize, guys. I can't just sit with my hands folded and record. I'm doing this. I'm literally picturing one of my friends sitting in front of me. I have a chair in front of my desk and it's like I'm talking to my homegirl. That's how I do this. And I use my hands. I talk with my hands. So I apologize for knocking the mic from time to time. But okay, see, now I lost my train of thought. Let's see. Perfectionism. Oh, yes. So if you're listening to this podcast episode, I think this is where I was going. If you're listening to this, you are probably like me and you have issues with procrastination, which we talked about procrastination a couple of weeks ago when we talked about the cave woman within. So you may be listening and you may be tempted to turn this off and say, I'm not a perfectionist at all. In fact, I don't even really get to the point of perfectionism because I procrastinate so much that by the time I start doing things, it's super late and I don't get a chance to perfect them. So sometimes we think about perfectionism as people who, they have to have every last detail perfect and they just work and work and work and work until it's done. And sometimes we look up to perfectionists. I know I used to. I used to look up to what I thought a perfectionist was. And I used to want to emulate that. I used to say, these are people that are, they have great attention to detail. They keep going until they get it just right. And I should be doing that. But there is a difference between someone who is striving for excellence and a perfectionist. And I want to break that down for you today. Also, I want to break down the 3 different types of perfectionism and convince you that you are a perfectionist. And I know that you're probably like, but I'm not. I'm not. I want to convince you that in some way, shape, or form, you are a perfectionist. You're a perfectionist. Perfectionism is really just procrastination. And I remember the first time I realized that, I was like, wait, what? Perfectionism is really just procrastination, but it really is. When you are a perfectionist, you're really just self-sabotaging and stopping yourself from actually doing the thing or putting the thing out into the world. And that's a huge paradigm shift. That literally, insert mind blown emoji, right? My mind was blown when I realized this. I had no idea. And I didn't realize how I was a perfectionist. I thought there's no way I'm a perfectionist because I barely get anything done. I wait till the last minute. I wait till the deadline is right there staring in my face. But I want to convince you today that I am a perfectionist. You're probably a perfectionist too, when I break down the 3 different types of perfectionism. So let's talk about how perfectionism is really on the spectrum of procrastination, and it's all due to our underlying anxieties and underlying fear, our underlying fear of putting ourselves out there and being rejected or criticized. I mean, really, that's all perfectionism is. All it is us having fear and having anxiety. I remember the first time that I realized I was an anxious person. I remember so I went and I saw a therapist. This was several years ago because I couldn't sleep well. I couldn't sleep. I had a problem with sleep initiation, with like falling asleep. And then if I woke up to use the restroom or if something stirred me and woke me up, I couldn't get back to sleep. And I couldn't figure out, I mean, I had this issue for years and years since I was a teenager, and I couldn't figure out why this was. I, wasn't taking I would take melatonin, a melatonin supplement to help me to sleep. And that was super helpful. But then I found myself continuing to increase the dose of the melatonin, and it was just kind of going up and up and up. And I was just like, is there any point in time that I'll be able to sleep without taking this melatonin? And so I remember, I think I like ran out of melatonin for some reason, and I wasn't able to go to the store to get it. And I had a terrible time sleeping that night. And so I said, I need to really figure this out. So I went and I saw a mental health provider at my job, and it was a psychiatrist. It was a psychiatrist. And so I was telling her about my life, and she wanted to know everything. I'm thinking I'm going there to talk about sleep. I'm like, why is she asking me about my career? And like, I know it sounds crazy again, but I really did not understand how those things were connected. I was like, I'm a very calm, I really prided myself on being a very calm, very level-headed person who doesn't get super worked up about things. I'm, very, very laid back, very low key, like that's something I really saw my identity that way. And my mother was that way too. She's very low stress, low key. And so imagine my shock and awe when I'm sitting there talking to the psychiatrist, and her final diagnosis for me was anxiety. And I was like, ma'am, I'm gonna need you to go back and, maybe you have some CME, some continuing medical education you need to do. Maybe you need to, read some more books. Like, I am not anxious. I am not an anxious person. So she said to me, I think you have anxiety, and I want to test this out. I'm going to give you an anxiolytic. And I'm not saying that this was the right thing to do, whatever. This is what she did. She gave me some pills. She was like, these are not sleeping pills, but these are anxiety pills. This will help anxiety, right? They were benzos, a benzodiazepine. I think she gave me Valium. It might've been Valium. I don't know. She gave me only like she gave me like 7, right? So I didn't, and I never got them again. So it wasn't something that I took long term, but she said, I just want to try something out. If you take this before bed, like maybe 30 minutes before bed, I think is what she said, and you're able to fall asleep and sleep well through the night, then I have validated that you have anxiety and you don't have like a primary like sleep issue. It's like you're anxious and you're thinking about too much, and it's hard for your brain to relax and fall asleep. I was like, okay, man, I mean, I guess I'll take these pills, but like I doubt that they're going to work because I don't have anxiety. Like, what do you, I don't understand. Like, whatever. I'll guess I'll go to the pharmacy and get these filled, right? That was my thought process. I was like, this lady, wait till I go back and tell her. I'm going to have to go back and tell her like next week that this did not work. Y'all, when I tell you, I took that medicine and I had like the best sleep of my life. Like I slept like a newborn baby. And then I was like, I woke up the next day and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm anxious. That was, let's see, that was about 2013, 2014. brand new on my job, out of residency, right? And dealing with the imposter syndrome and feeling like a fraud throughout the day. So go back to the imposter syndrome episode if you did not listen to that. But really, truly, in my heart of hearts, believed that I was holding it all together and that I wasn't an anxious person. I was holding it together during the day, but clearly at night, all of those thoughts running through my head of I could have done this better. Why didn't I do that? It was like literally a broken record of just like replaying the day, thinking about the next day, worrying. Like I did not know I was someone who worried. I used to like pride myself on being like, I don't worry about things. I just take them as they come. That was not true. That was not true. I wanted to believe that about myself, but that clearly wasn't true. So I took the pills for 7 days and slept like a baby every single night. And I didn't refill it. But that was the first time that I was like, okay, I worry a lot and I'm an anxious person. And I did not understand how what I was doing during my day was contributing significantly was contributing to my anxiety and was also caused by my anxiety. So the feeling stuck, the feeling like I can't progress, all of that was because of my anxiety. And then when I would do those things, it would perpetuate the cycle of anxiety. So it would make me anxious, and then that would make me feel more stuck. And so, like I said, it wasn't until about a year ago or so that I began to break that cycle. And once I became self-aware, because really the first step is self-awareness, and I preach that to you guys all the time. Once I became self-aware, that's when I realized all the behaviors that were really perfectionist tendencies and how they were getting in the way of me achieving my goals. And again, I never thought of myself as a perfectionist. Never. I was like, I wish I could be a perfectionist. Like, we glorify, and I see it changing a little bit now, but we tend to glorify perfectionism culture, right? Like, I'm a perfectionist. Like, everything has to be just right and just so. And I always thought that was commendable, like I said, because I was such a procrastinator that the idea that somebody would start their work and then put so much into it until it was perfect. Like, I was looking up to those people. I was like, man, if I could only be that. But honestly, they are me. I am them. That's number one. It just manifests differently. But that like going, doing, and never feeling like it's perfect is really just fear and procrastination playing out. So let me break it down for you guys. The three different perfectionists, the three different types of perfectionism. And ain't nothing about this scientific, so don't go Google, the three different types of perfectionism. I promise you, this is totally like these are my personal observations about myself and about the people around me. So I have no idea whether or not this is grounded in science at all. The perfectionism itself, that concept is grounded in science, but the three types of perfectionism that I'm discussing, I don't know. I have no clue. But so before I tell you about the three types, I did want to mention how perfectionism is described by Psychology Today. Psychology Today is not the end all be all of really anything. And some of their stuff is a little bit problematic. But I like the way that they describe and discuss perfectionism. So the very first line, it says, what is perfectionism? And it says, perfectionism is a trait that makes life an endless report card on accomplishments or looks. And I was like, man, an endless report card. that sounds about right. And we talked about this before, about the concept of self-worth and how many of us tie our self-worth to what we accomplish, right? And that we value ourselves and we believe that others value us based on our accomplishments. And a lot of times that leads to these tendencies of being a perfectionist. So for me, the way I have seen perfectionism play out are in these three ways. So number one, perfectionism avoidance. So perfectionism leading to avoidance, right? A la procrastination, right? But I want to talk about specifically like the perfectionism of it, because again, you might be thinking, but if I'm procrastinating, how is that perfectionism? Because I'm not actually doing anything. Just hear me out. So perfectionism avoidance, perfectionism planning, right? So people who plan, people who are always about to launch whatever thing, people who are always in the process of getting ready to start, like you're always getting ready to start and you're always preparing, but you haven't actually started, I hit my mic again, but you haven't actually started doing. So perfectionism planning, and then perfectionism overdoing, right? So you do, you just always doing, perfecting, doing, and then you don't actually get the thing out, or you get it out very delayed. So that's how I used to conceptualize perfectionism, was number three only, right? The people who are always like refining until it gets just right. And then they put the thing out into the world. I never understood the other two. The other two are also perfectionism. So let's talk about first perfectionism avoidance. So a real example in my everyday life, and something that I'm still trying to get a handle on, although I'm much better at it, meal planning. So if you are a mother, you understand. Even if you are not a mother, you understand, right? If you do not plan your meals for the week, you can find yourself, or I used to find myself, eating out a lot. And so I knew that this was something I needed to do. I need to plan the meals for my family and then actually cook them. Right? But then it just felt like such a daunting and overwhelming task. It felt super big. It felt really big. And again, when things are big, your cavewoman brain is like, nah, sis, that sounds a little complicated. What we're going to do is order Chinese tonight, and then tomorrow we're going to Postmates some chicken wings, and then Wednesday what we're going to do. So, right? And so, cause that's just easier. That's just less, it's less messy. It's much less messy for me to just order, right? And here's the thing. I felt like if I was meal planning, it had to be this like elaborate, Pinterest worthy situation of like, you know, first you turn on you got your pot going, you got your Instant Pot, you got your slow cooker, you're baking in the oven, and you just have all the things, and then you're done, and you have this elaborate spread, and you have it all neatly arranged in bowls, glass bowls, and blah, 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 right? Like, if it was not going to be that, then I can't even get started. I can't get started. And because getting from not doing anything, to being Pinterest worthy seemed like a huge leap, because it was, right? That's a huge leap. Getting from I don't meal plan or prep or meal anything at all to, okay, now I'm ready to take these photos and put them on Pinterest. Like, that was a huge leap. So then I just pulled back and I was like, okay, so I'm just not going to do anything. I'm just not going to do anything, because I can't get it to that level. And what if my kids, okay, here we go. What if my kids don't like the thing that I cook? What if my husband is like, I'd rather eat out. Like, this is not really it. What if I don't even really like it? What if I cook all this food and it goes to waste? It was just like, what if, right? So then it became this thing that I would write down in my planner to do every week, and then it just wouldn't get done. And it'd be like, I'm driving home from work and I'm like, oh snap, we ain't got no food. We ain't got no food to eat today. What are we eating? Oh, I guess we're just going to have to eat out today, right? So that was it. That was the avoidance. Here's another example. Again, this is something that I am still overcoming. My productivity and everything has come a long way with regard to work and this, my passion project, my side hustle, like this business that I'm creating in this podcast. But in this area, I still have a lot of work to do. So the gym, or I should say, not the gym, exercising, because it doesn't have to be the gym. But for me, it's almost like I feel like if I don't have like the perfect gym outfit, and if I am not like, super cute and going there with my little notebook so I can write down all the repetitions that I've done, and oh my goodness, then ain't no business. Like, I have no business going to the gym or working out at all, right? Because why do I keep saying gym? Like, I could work out from home. I could just walk. I live in a beautiful community. I could walk outside or walk, jog, or do something, right? Just do something to move my body. But it's like I feel really, really stuck in this area because I feel like I have to be... If I start the week and I can't see clearly, even if I can, let's say, okay, I'm recording this on a Monday early in the morning. So let's say today, right? Today I have it on my planner to go to the gym, and I can actually see that I have built this into my schedule for the day, right? If I don't also see how I can get there the 2 other days this week, then it's like, I just won't even go today either, because I'll be like, ain't no point. Now tell me how that makes any sense, right? Oh, there's no point in going today at all because I may not be able to go the rest of the week. Instead of just going today, taking it day by day and saying, you know what? Zone of proximal greatness. That's the greatness that I can do today. So then tomorrow will take care of itself, or the next day will take care of itself. But no, it's like, if I don't go to the gym, if I can't see a clear path to doing the 3 to 5 days at the gym, then I rather just not go. Or why can't I just work out from home? Turn on YouTube. There's really no excuse for me to not be exercising. There's really no excuse. There's YouTube. There's just so many ways that I can get my body moving. But I'm still stuck in this mindset of it has to be perfect. And I'm just keeping it all the way real with you guys. I have overcome a lot on this journey of ditching self-sabotage, but I am not all the way there yet. I want to document this in hopes that I get there, but also with showing you guys that, this is a lifelong process. This, breaking the cycle of self-sabotage is a lifelong process. So perfectionism avoidance is what I do. When you think about perfectionism avoidance, I want you to think of me like eating a slice of pizza because I didn't meal prep for the week, right? And the thing about it is, the thing is usually so daunting because we put it in our mind, because that's perfectionism. It has to be perfect, right? And so your cave woman within is like, or not, like, we're not doing this. This is requiring, my brain is burning too many calories trying to think about how to get from 0 to hero. So we're just going to just slide back to -2 and order that Pizza Hut. So that's the first way that perfectionism may be manifesting in your life. The second way that perfectionism may be manifesting in your life is perfectionism planning. So, child, listen, I have stories for days. I am a planner. I'm sitting at my desk right now, and I didn't plan it this way, but I'm sitting at my desk right now, and I can count 1, 2, 3, 4 planners, and then 5 planners, and then 2 bullet journals, not including the bullet journal that's in my purse right now. Like, that's just what's like living on my desk right now. They're not put away. These are like planners that I'm actually using. Using in quotes. No, I actually do use my planners now, but I have a propensity toward planning the thing and never doing it. So if you are again, perfectionism shows up in different ways in different areas of my life. So I have, for my business, I bought this planner. It's an Erin Condren. Oh, and if you follow me on Instagram, you know I love planners. I used to have a whole planner Instagram. Y'all, I am obsessed with planners, and that will never change because I think planners are beautiful, and I love writing. I'm like the girl that like loved going back to school supply shopping because I love pens and highlighters and markers and all of the things that make me feel like I have my life in control, even when I don't. I do have it in control now, mostly other than the exercising thing, but mostly in control. But like back in the day when I had nothing in control, I was like, what can I do to get my life in control? Oh, let me buy some planners. Bought all of the planners, planned all of the things. I'm talking about, I have entire cartons full of stickers and washi tape. And if you don't know what washi tape and stickers are in a planner, go to YouTube or Pinterest or Instagram and you will get lost in a rabbit hole of planning. Just search one of those hashtags or go to YouTube and type in planning, pretty planning or whatever. And y'all, it's a whole, they have conferences, and I really want to go to the conference. They have whole conferences just for planners. Okay. So there's a whole bunch of us out here who are just planning all of the things, but sometimes we're not actually doing them. Right. So sometimes our perfectionism causes us to plan, and we're always preparing. We're always in preparation mode for getting started. This was something that I dealt with regard to this podcast. So I remember, when did I have the idea for this podcast? I had the idea of, I am going to start a podcast in October of 2019. So October of last year. As you can go back and tell, I launched this podcast on February 3rd. So from October to February, so really October to like January when I started recording, I was in planning mode, right? So I gotta, I have to, download the course and, purchase the course and download it and, go through it and analyze. And then I had to buy, a planner just for this. Cause that was a thing. I needed a planner, right? For the podcast. And, let me put down, and then I downloaded a PDF on like all the steps to take to start a podcast. And then I started planning. And then I was like, I can't start recording until I've planned out what my episodes will be for the whole year. Do y'all know that I planned, in fact, I'm about to flip to this. I wonder if I dated it because I don't remember when I did this, but I sat down and I planned episodes for the entire year. Why? I just felt like I needed to do that, right? Like, how could I start something if I don't have a plan for what I'm going to do for the whole year? Now, have I stuck to this plan at all? I'm going to let you answer that. Like, clearly, no. Clearly, I haven't. I have, let's see, I've recorded 4 of the episodes, and then the rest, and they're good episodes. I'll get to them. But obviously, I'm taking what you guys are telling me in the community. I'm taking things that I talk about on prior episodes, to give me ideas for future episodes. But again, I had to plan all of that out. And then I needed my podcasting equipment. It was just like I had all my deadlines and due dates set, right? So I did all this, and then I didn't actually start. Right? I was just planning. And if I didn't break myself from this, I would still be planning the podcast today. I'd be sitting down planning it rather than just doing it. And it wasn't until I told myself, and I mentioned this in episode 0, that one of the things that was keeping me from starting was this idea of editing, right? Because editing seemed like the big scary thing, right? That was not shutting my cave woman down. That was turning my cave woman up. My cave woman was like, "Oh, we about to turn up now. You talking about editing a podcast? Nah, sis. Now we're not doing that. How about we just watch a YouTube video on how to edit a podcast and just keep watching several YouTube videos on how to edit a podcast instead of just recording the podcast and editing it." It was like, no, I'm just going to keep planning, keep listening, So it wasn't until I'm trying to think of the exact moment that I said, okay, I am going to stop planning and I'm going to start doing. And it was about the time that I was writing a blog post every single week. Every single week I was writing blog posts, and then I stopped writing blog posts, right? Because I was planning, quote unquote, planning for this podcast, right? So I wanted to transition my blog to the podcast episodes and have my website based on the podcast episodes. And I didn't understand, like I would write a blog post every week, right? And then I stopped, and then people were going to the website, but there was nothing new there. And it just made me feel like, okay, I stopped making it about me and I started making it about you guys in the squad. And I was like, how am I helping my people by just planning, right? You guys were looking for me. You guys were like, have I missed blog posts? I haven't seen any in a while. What's going on? What's happening with the website? I was getting these messages, and then I'd be like, oh no, it's under construction. The website is under construction, and everything was under construction. And I was planning, but I wasn't actually doing anything. And then I realized that once I stopped making it about myself and made it about you guys in the squad, right? And how my perfectionism, right, by the planning was standing in the way of you guys getting what you needed to be successful. That helped me just wipe all of that away, right? I was just like, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this thing, and it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be beautiful, and it still isn't. Listen, I be hitting my microphone every 2 seconds, right? It is what it is. It's not beautiful. It's not perfect, but it is done. It's done. And I used to see the phrase done is better than perfect, blah, blah, blah. I used to see that, but it didn't resonate with me. And I felt like that was for someone else, right? That's for people who can actually do stuff. That's not me. I can't do hard things, right? And so again, doing things like changing my perspective, changing my morning routine, getting really intentional, still planning. So this is not me telling you not to plan. Again, I have 5 planners sitting within arm's distance of me right now. So you still have to plan, but implementation is going to be messy. And once I took the focus off of myself, because again, my self-worth tends to be tied up in how well I do things. But I am now focused on you guys. And that's why I read a review at the beginning of each episode, because it reminds me that this is not about me, right? And in my imperfections can actually bless you guys. And it has. You guys, somebody actually said to me, the fact that my podcast is not perfect is why she listens. And I was like, wait, what? Like, huh? Right? But she was like, you keep it all the way real. You keep it all the way real. And she was like, I love the fact that you just told us you weren't going to edit the podcast. That is what helps me. And I said, wow, like I had no idea that my imperfections could be what gives you guys hope and gives you guys motivation. But it totally makes sense, right? Like if you guys really saw me as this like perfect person who could do no wrong, you would be looking up to me, right? But you wouldn't really see a path for you to get there. So just like the review, the person that DM'd me on Facebook, she was looking up to me as like, oh, wow, she's great. Rather than saying, you know what, she's not any better than me. If she can do this, I can do this too. I got a little bit off track with that, like a little bit of a tangent, but I just wanted to kind of show you guys how you could be a perfectionist by just like planning all the things and not actually implementing them. And then the third way that perfectionism could be showing up in your life is by overdoing. So these are the folks, this is how we typically define perfectionism. These are the folks that I thought these people were amazing, right? You're still amazing. If this is you, you're still amazing. I'm not saying you're not amazing, but I just thought that this was something to emulate, right? Because again, I was stuck in perfection avoidance / perfection planning that I could not get myself into motion. So I'm looking at folks who are in motion and I'm like, wow, that's amazing. That's good for them. Like they actually, I mean, at least they're actually doing something, right? But these are the folks that they start a project, right? And they do and they refine and they do and they refine and they keep going and they refine and they refine and they refine. And it's almost like they're never done refining and they can't actually get that thing out there. And so if you think about it, at the end of the day, all three of the perfectionists, the avoider, the planner, and the overdoer are not putting out their ideas or their projects into the world, right? So really, they're all procrastinating, all of them. And I never thought of an overdoer as a procrastinator because I'm like, but they're doing something. There's more than I can do, right? I ain't doing nothing until the last possible second, like 2 minutes before the deadline, right? I'm not doing anything, but I'm like, they're doing something, but have they put it out into the world? No, right? Like at the end of the day, are they not still in the same position that I'm in? So we're all procrastinating. We're all self-sabotaging. And it's all based on that underlying fear of putting our stuff out into the world and getting rejected. And it's almost a little worse for the overdoer. It's almost a little worse because if you think back to the cave woman episode, at least the avoider can say to themselves, okay, well, you know, I put this out and it wasn't great, but I mean, I didn't start till 2 minutes ago anyway. I didn't start working on this till right before the deadline. So, I mean, of course it's not going to be great. But imagine how much angst you can have when you have been doing, refining. That fear of like, okay, now I have to put this out there just for somebody to critique it and to criticize it and to cut it down. That almost can affect your self-worth even more, right? The planner is probably like a little bit in the middle because at least, you know, you're planning, but you still haven't started anything. So, but the person who is refining, and it has to be just so, that level of anxiety of when you finally get that thing out there, that can cut to your soul when it gets knocked down. right? And there's going to be somebody that's going to knock it down because everything is not for everyone, right? So everything that we put out into the world is not going to be like 100% regarded well by everyone, right? So I have a heart for you guys, for the overdoers, because at least we procrastinators can hang our hat right on the procrastination and be like, well, whatever, we didn't do anything. But you guys who are refining and overdoing, that is a different level of stress that I can't say that I've ever felt, because again, I tend to lead more toward toward avoiding and planning rather than overdoing. But I can just imagine, right? Like I think back to Erykah Badu, who says she's an artist, and since she's sensitive about her, right? It's a family podcast, so I don't curse. But like I'm thinking back to, artists who, a lot of artists can be perfectionists, right? Because you're putting your craft into the world. You want it to sound a certain way. Other creatives, and I count myself as being a creative now that I am a podcaster and I'm a writer, right? So like that can be overwhelming. And I experienced this, I just said that I can't say that I've experienced this, but as I'm speaking, I'm thinking about my blog posts. And that's one of the reasons I stopped them, because I found myself refining my blog post. You finally get it out, and then I would get a text like, oh, there's a typo. You know who was texting me? My husband. Because he would read the blog post, right? This was when the blog was about, it was a joint blog with he and I would, ran this blog together. And it was about, how we're juggling our life. It was called Husband, Wife, Doctor Life. But like, I would throw a little like mini temper tantrum inside. I wouldn't say it to him. I'd be like, okay, thanks. But inside I'm like, ugh, geez, of course there's a typo. Like, it was frustrating. So on a very micro level, I empathize with you if you are someone that is an overdoer. And then what happens is a lot of times the deadline comes to get it out, and then you end up having to put it out as is, but in your mind, it's still not perfect. And that leads to even further anxiety. So all three types, the avoider, the planner, and the overdoer or the refiner, we are all perfectionists, right? We're all scared out of our minds about how what we put out into the world is going to be received. It's just that we deal with it differently. The people that you see in the world that are thriving, the people who you see, and this is obviously an oversimplification and an overgeneralization, but if you look at the entrepreneur world, that's dominated by white men predominantly, right? If you look at the folks that are like on top, you look at the Gary V's and the Tony Robbins and like those, like that echelon of folks, they are messy implementers. They are not avoiders. They are not planners, and they're not overdoers. These are the people that put out the messy first draft, and they're just like, you know what? It's going to be terrible. Oh, well, it's going to suck. And they're just like comfortable with that. And I never understood how. I was like, how, like what? But if it's bad, and they're just like, no, it's bad. Yep. It's not great, but they understand that gets the ball rolling, right? And then you can change and refine it. And I realize it's because they have uncoupled the product or the thing that they're putting out, the project, from their own self-worth. They've uncoupled it, right? So to them, it's like, if you criticize that work or that project, they're like, that's great. Thank you for giving me feedback so I can make it better. And that is a mindset shift that, for those of us who live on the perfectionism spectrum, it can be very difficult to get to that point. Like, how do you get to the point of, I'm just going to put the minimally viable whatever, right? In fact, that's a business term, y'all, the minimally viable product. Those of us who are perfectionists, we're like clutching our pearls. Like, you want me to put out something that's minimally viable? Minimally viable? That doesn't sound like something like an achievement. Whereas in the entrepreneur world, that is like a huge achievement. You put out your minimally viable product, right? Because they're focusing on the viable part. We're focusing on the word minimally, right? And we're like, that sounds like failure. They're focusing on the word viable. They're like, viable, like that word literally means like alive, right? Like it's alive, like it's out there right now. It's now we can grow and learn and grow from that. And so how do you make the shift from living on the perfectionism spectrum, the avoidance, the planning, or the refining / overdoing? And how do you get to the point of, I'm just going to put this minimally viable thing out into the world and just like let the chips fall where they may, and then start cleaning them up? Like, how do you get to that point? How do you get to that point? And so, I don't have any like real answers. I have noticed that I am shifting toward that, like minimally viable, like being like, oh yes, this is viable, like yay, rather than focusing on the minimally part, right? And it has to do with me. I really just do picture myself on a football field, right? And making those small incremental improvements, moving myself into my zone of proximal greatness every single day. And just knowing that what I'm putting out there is helpful. So here's the thing. I really think what happens with these entrepreneurs, and I see it now because it's happening with me. You put out the minimally viable whatever. I'm going to call this my minimally viable podcast because Lord is minimal, and but it is viable, right? So you put that out, and then you start to get that feedback that, oh my goodness, this is so helpful. You're changing my life. You've done this. You've done that for me. Like, I feel like things are shifting. And then that feedback, right, is what propels you forward. The problem is, unless you put it out there into the world, you're not going to get that feedback, right? And so you have to literally just take that first step. But again, how do you take that first step? Here's what you do. You break it down and put it on paper. It's the same stuff that I'm always telling you guys. Break down the big scary thing. It seems big and scary, right? But break it down into smaller chunks and write about it. Say, I am really scared. I write these things out still. Every day, every single day, there's something that I'm doing that scares me. And I write about it. I say, I'm scared by this because I'm scared to do this because I feel like it's going to make me feel XYZ, right? Or it's not going to be great, or people are going to criticize it. Or it's too much. It's too big, right? And then for the things, the actual like doing, right? The things, the projects or the tasks that I'm saying are too big, I just try to break them down into smaller bite-sized pieces that the cave woman is able to handle. Because if she's able to handle it, if she can look at that and say, this feels comfortable, then she's much more likely to sit down somewhere and allow me to do the work, right? But if I'm literally still trying to jump from zero to hero, from no meal prepping to Pinterest worthy, Instagrammable meal prep, then it's just probably not going to happen. So I put it on paper. I pop it out of my head. I put it on paper. I write it down, right? And then I start just tackling it little by little. And guys, the key is that little bit, that little bit that you put out into the world, you will get positive feedback about it. You'll get some negative feedback too. You'll get some criticism too, whatever. but you'll probably start getting people saying, oh man, that was so cool. And that's what can help you to know that you're on the right track. And it's not to say that we're only want to be validated by others, because I think there's something to be said for self-validation. But I can validate myself now because I know that my work is helping others, right? My purpose is not about me, right? I have to move myself and my self-value and my self-worth out of the way and realize that you guys are what matter to me. I'm literally like my poor microphone. You guys are what matter to me. You guys, your growth, your deliverance from whatever is keeping you bound and keeping you stuck, right? And so if I keep focusing on me, then you know what? I'm never going to move forward. But if I focus on adding value to your life, especially as an empath, if you're here listening, you're probably very much like me. Like I said, like you really care about other people. So think about the others that you are impacting with your work. Think about the joy that you're going to bring to other people's lives. Write about that joy. Don't just think about it, right? Like I said, it's not about affirmations and like, I am going to make a difference in the world, right? If you don't really believe that, like you're like just saying that to yourself is not going to help, but like write about that joy. Think about and write about a time that you did take that small step and it paid off greatly, right? All of that is going to help propel you to make that very first step. And then I also do this thing, which I have a whole episode coming. I've actually already recorded it, but I haven't released it yet, on the 5-second rule. So just Google the 5-second rule by Mel Robbins, but it's a way to overcome that mental block, that roadblock that you'll put up right before you put out your purpose work. Right? So right before you put out that project or you put out that blog post or you record that episode, you do the thing that is allowing you to walk in your purpose. Your cave woman is going to show up and she's going to try to shut you down. So just counting down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and just doing the thing can be really, really helpful. It just kind of like reshifts and reprograms your brain and like gets you into action. The people that are successful in this world, like I said, are the ones that have a bias toward action. They are always thinking about about moving forward and just like taking and putting one foot in front of the other. But what I find is that I'll go to those people's pages and what they're doing is they're yelling at me to take the first step and have a bias toward action and take the first step and, leap without looking and push through the fear and blah. And it's like, that all sounds great. And it's true. It's all true. But for those of us who are perfectionists, it's going to take more. It's going to take for us to actually start doing. And I want to give you practical strategies on how to break down these tasks to start doing them. So again, there'll be a whole podcast episode is coming up. It's on the year. It's on the year plan, right? So it's coming up in terms of how to actually like practical ways to break this down. I also discuss this in my Planning for Procrastinators guide. So go to www.planning.productivepurpose.com. That's planning.productivepurpose.com. And you can download the Planning for Procrastinators guide because it's a way for those of us who are perfectionists / procrastinators / planners, avoiders, all of that, to actually start like doing the thing. Right? Not just plan it, but actually start doing it. And I talk about how to actually break down your goals in that guide. So go to that guide and take a look at it and let me know what you think. And yeah, that is today's episode. And I really hope that this has been helpful for you guys to think about the 3 different forms of perfectionism. Right? So avoidance, planning, and overdoing. And again, one more thing I wanted to mention. This is not to say you should not strive for excellence. I strive for excellence in this podcast. I want this podcast to be excellent. But I want it to be excellent because it impacts you and it gets you guys in motion and helps you guys to know that you're not alone and that you can do hard things and you can overcome these obstacles in your life. To me, that's excellence. Excellence is not having, perfect sound, never saying or ah on the podcast, right? Having it perfectly edited. That is not excellence. Excellence is if I can help you guys move into your personal zone of proximal greatness and start achieving the goals, right? And living the life that you've always wanted to live. If this podcast is able to do that for you, then I have achieved my goal. And to me, that is excellence. So strive for excellence, but realize that excellence comes in the doing, right? So excellence comes when you put yourself out there and then continue to work on the thing and making it better and better and better, right? But just planning it or just kind of refining it, but before you put it out there is not going to lead to excellence. It's going to lead to burnout. It's going to lead to increased anxiety, and it's going to lead to you not kind of making the difference that I know you want to make in this world. If you are listening to this podcast, it has the word purpose in it. So I truly believe that you have a purpose in your life that God has created you for, and that you are here to live out your purpose. And so I am here to help you do that. All right, guys. So go to planning.productivepurpose.com, download your Planning for Procrastinators guide. Also, please join me in the Pop Squad in the Facebook group. I would love to have you there. That's where I get now so even though I have my year plan, right? I am getting inspiration from you guys on how to move forward and what you guys want to hear in the podcast. So I would love to hear from you. You can also shoot me an email, contact@productivepurpose.com. Check out the show notes, and let's move forward together. Let's get this stuff into the world so that we can start making a difference. All right, guys, I hope you have a blessed day. Peace and love. Thank you for listening to the Productive on Purpose podcast. Now, take the next step. Head on over to www.productivepurpose.com to download your free Planning for Procrastinators workbook. It's time to start walking in our purpose, y'all. I'll catch you on the next episode.